my god, shock, horror, terror, crime wave, African youth gangs taking over my town of Melbourne, no-go zones, crime sprees, it's all terrible, except it isn't real. G'day viewers, it's Wednesday, which means time for Wankerfat Wednesday, and why, you may ask, would I not give a fuck about a crime wave by African youth gangs? Because this is not just being reported heavily by conservative media, but also by our conservative federal politicians and the conservative state opposition. Well, why would I not give a fuck about such a serious topic? Because it's not fucking real. It's absolutely absurd. A current state premier who was elected a couple of years ago enraged the shit out of conservatives, not just because he's not conservative, but because he campaigned on some really quite lefty policies, and he got in, and then he acted on his promises, and it's being popular, and it's doing their fucking head in that the stuff Daniel Andrews said might actually work, might actually be popular. He's far from perfect. He's a politician, and like all of them, lots of failings. But ever since he's been elected, the fucking Murdoch tabloid rag in this state has been non-stop crime, 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 trying to whip up further, lying, totally fucking lying. Like, yes, there are incidents of crime. And yes, in Australia generally, Melbourne particularly, we've had an influx of migrants and refugees and asylum seekers from African countries, noticeably in the last 10 years. And so there's a very visible difference when there's suddenly an African community that maybe wasn't there a decade ago. And yes, when members of this community commit crimes, it's kind of noticeable. And yes, there are some young people of African from the African community. I was going to say of African descent. They're not of African descent. They're African, and they've moved here with their families. And yes, some of them are out of control. Some of them are horrible little thugs. Some of them are nasty little pieces of shit that really need to be dealt with. But there is no widespread African youth gang. The Conservatives have consistently referred to the Apex gang, the big scary thing, despite the fact the police have told them there's no Apex gang as such. Some people did use that as a reference for each other. It was used as a recognisable calling card on things like Facebook. But they go, there's no gang. Stop saying there's a gang. There isn't a gang. There's no Crips and Bloods in Melbourne. And this shit has been repeated in Australia and everywhere else around the world, just endlessly. It's just a different group at different times. You know, at one point it's the Irish, and then it was the Chinese, it was the Jews at one point. It was the Italians after World War II. It was the Vietnamese in the 70s and 80s. And now it's the Africans. And it's bullshit. It is straight up fucking lies. Look, if some of this stuff they're saying has worried you, and go, but yeah, but there were those robberies. Oh my God, there were these carjacking, and there was that public thing. It must be true. It isn't true. For those individual incidents that seem to leap out at you, at the same time, thousands of violent crimes by non-Africans are being committed, okay? It's just that this is like bias confirmations. Like, you see it and you go, therefore, that's something I'm not used to seeing. It must be happening all the time. It simply isn't. The police are coming out and saying this stuff about African gang crime wave is not true. It is not supported by statistics and, fact. And that hasn't even made the Conservatives slow down. For instance, the state shadow attorney general will, I respectfully disagree. While you have your facts and figures and objective statistics, I have an election I'm trying to win, so I am going to just stoke the fires of racism and appeal to the basest aspects of human nature. And fuck, that makes me sick. It's almost ridiculous for me to be upset about conservative politicians and media outlets being that cynical, just blatantly lying, just saying that facts and reality don't matter when they've got a narrative to push. I feel like that makes me sound naive that I'm upset about this, because this is just what politicians do. Not just conservative politicians. Politicians generally push a narrative over reality any time it suits their agenda. But I really want to push this out there because they're not going to let up. No amount of truth or reality will stop this lot from, it's not even dog whistling now, it's megaphoning. It's like, black people are bad. It's that guy's fault. Don't vote for him. I mean, I work in offices, really conservative, middle-aged people. There's not at any time been any conversation that went, wow, this crime's out of control, isn't it? You wouldn't believe it from, like I say, the Murdoch tabloid rags just keeps running all these front pages. Crime, terror, no-go zones, warning, danger, danger, Will Robinson, black people everywhere. There's not, I'm not exaggerating, I have not heard a single conversation about, well, the crime's out of control, I'm scared. It's like, they're everywhere and there's no-go zone. It is a lie. When you see this about African crime gang wave, it's a lie. It's a hideously racist lie designed to appeal to the worst in people. So again, maybe I'm naive, but I'm really saying people don't fall for it. It's, yes, when you hear sensational reports of individual incidents, they can really stick in your mind. It's like the people saying like, but look, there really is a problem. And they will point to up to half a dozen things that have happened in the last year. And each of those things are bad and should not have happened. And the people behind them are scumbags and should be punished. But it's like half a dozen. I mean, it's like, there's more than a murder every week of women being murdered by their current or former domestic partners. But if you demand action on that, you're some sort of crazy extremist. But referring to half a dozen non-lethal criminal incidents is a crime wave. But pointing to actual severe problems with murder, it's like, what are you, some sort of crazy extremist feminist? It's like, why the fuck are people so bad at risk assessment? Why are people so easy to manipulate? And why haven't I exploited this to my own ends? I should be the head of a cult or something. In all seriousness, people are so fucking stupid and so easy to manipulate. I should be making money off it somehow. But yeah, unlike this mob, like I said, when they print it in the paper, they say it on TV, on the radio, or the politicians are saying it, they're lying to you. Please, just don't. And if you are too scared to face up and go, oh, maybe that affected me because it did actually trigger a little bit of latent racism in it. We all have it, okay? There's nobody who doesn't have prejudices against other people. And there's nobody who's not susceptible to having those prejudices manipulated. But if you don't have the guts to really look at it squarely and going, okay, why am I being suckered in by this? Why am I being triggered by that? Then really you do have issues. And I'm not going to let you off the hook. You need to fucking address it. And if you're too gutless to look at your own prejudices in your motivations, then you're really the type of person I don't give a fuck about.